Seems like 9-3 was the ceiling when we were talking preseason expectations. That was like the 9-3, maybe. But man, it's achievable. It's been achieved. It's been accomplished. Best record since 2016. Welcome to Florida State Seminoles Live. A win over the arch rival, both Miami and Florida, 9-3. Life is good. We got James Coleman here. We got Jason Parker talking Seminoles. Guys, how we doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I think it should be announced right now. I do want to make a quick announcement off the top of the show here. Obviously, Monday was my 2-year sobriety. And as I enter year 3 of sobriety, I just want to announce to our viewers here an exclusive with MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, with Big Game James Coleman, that for the next year, my pronouns instead of he, him will be state and champs. Those are going to be my new pronouns because we run this state. The Sunshine State is now our state. We are, for the next 360 odd days, the state champions.
I'll make this reference to pronouns. As you can imagine, Jason, that terminology nor that topic has never been brought up on this channel. So I'm glad that the first time that on my network of channels that was brought up, it was brought up in a joking,
absolutely
amusing type way. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. James, how we doing? Oh,
James, you're muted, Benj. Mark muted James.
Yeah. My pronouns are thee, she, and it. I am thee.
Oh, got it. I got that one.
But I'm doing good, man. Like I said, man, I was so optimistic this season, and a lot of people kind of told me I got to be crazy or I got to be high, but you know, I could have been all of that. Multiple things can be true. I always tell people it doesn't have to be. We don't live in a vacuum, but I'm excited for what these guys did this season, and hopefully they close strong. And I think we're going to be excited in December because we'll be able to brag a little bit more on the recruiting front and on the NIL front. So all good things coming up.
What were your takeaways from the Florida game? That was a fun game. Like for me, who's just watching a football game, the only game of the night, I could just kind of settle in, didn't have to try to watch 5 games at the same time. It was a really good football game.
Well, one of the things that I apologize for not being able to come on last week. I would have loved to have been able to do that, but I went on a couple other pods and I was telling them, I said, the one thing I fear is that Anthony Richardson wake up and realize he's a quarterback. I mean, he's not a quarterback. He's the best athlete on the field. And Anthony Richardson did that, and the running game of Florida is really what kept this game good. It was very physical, and I like that.
Jason, your takeaways.
Well, other than the fact that it was a 4-hour ball game that took forever for those of us who had to drive up on Thanksgiving Day. But no, I said before the season started, I predicted 8-4. I said there'd be a stupid game we'd lose there. For us to end the way we did, for us to end with this 5-game winning streak, sweep over Miami and sweep over Florida, big win on the road at Syracuse, winning the games we're supposed to against Georgia Tech and Louisiana. As weird as it's going to sound, this is what Florida State is supposed to do. This is what we are expected to do when we are the Florida State Seminoles. We are supposed to go out there and handle our business. You know, I once again, and James said this before the start of the season when I asked him what team he was worried about, and he said Florida with Anthony Richardson because of him being a mobile quarterback. So give James Coleman all the credit in the world. He called this one right here. Florida stuck with it. David talked about it last week at our Gator Insider we had on the show that if Florida had a 200-yard rushing game, Florida could possibly win this ballgame. They had over 200 yards rushing, and they were competitive. But, James, I do have a quick question for you. Florida scored 1 point less than our previous 4 opponents had scored combined against us in their 38 points. And there's been some criticism of our defense, the way our defense played in this ballgame. Is that a case of our defense taking a step back, or is it in the case of me, who I think that it was just the fact that Florida was a better all-around team than Miami and Syracuse and Georgia Tech and Louisiana? Which one do you think it was?
I think Florida was just a better overall team. Mm-hmm. And that's really the only way you could chalk it up. Better offensive line. We've got an offensive lineman who's literally never gave up a sack or had a penalty. And that's something that you gotta account for. Good running game, 2 good running backs, obviously Anthony Richardson. They just missed 4 wide receivers, and the passing game isn't what killed us. It's the running game that's what killed it. And I think Bobby Bowden used to say this: a good defense can win you 8 games. The offense is going to have to bail the defense out at 4. And that's kind of what happened. I mean, he's had one bad game, but I will say it did exploit some of our weaknesses. We do need better interior D-line play, and we do need another linebacker to be able to help with that rotation.
On the offensive side of the ball, obviously Jordan Travis with another game where I think the play of the season was the one where he was going to get sacked and then he scored a touchdown. I still firmly believe I was in that end zone. He scored that touchdown. He was in the end zone. He scored a touchdown there. But my question to you on the offensive side of the ball, what were your takeaways there? Obviously, Florida State scoring 45 points, equaling their total against Miami this season. What are your takeaways from the offensive side of the ball in that game?
I mean, similar. I mean, one, that play was amazing. For anybody who wants to know something really, really cool, me, Peter Ward, Marvin Jones, Ward Dunn, who I don't think Ward Dunn has said a total of a paragraph of words to me in the entire time that I've ever seen him in my adult life. We all probably should have got a penalty. We were on the field. We were celebrating. We were like, it was just the Jordan Travis touchdown was one of the most amazing things. I actually just retweeted a highlight that somebody had with Bo Jackson on Tecmo Bowl. And I'm like, that's what Jordan Travis basically did to the Gators. But offensively, what you've seen, like you brought up the defense, right? And Florida scoring more points than the previous 3 opponents. Mike Norvell's resurgence in the offense, and Alex Atkins as well, and what the offense has been able to do post Clemson has been really something that people need to really talk about. They have, like, when I look at the Wake Forest loss, when I look at the NC State loss, when I look at the Clemson losses, I look at those as less of a defensive issue and more of a fact that the offense wasn't playing complementary football and did not do enough to be able to put the defense in good situations. Now, what the offense was able to do is actually put up points and force the issue for another team. And I think and even then, it still wasn't as dominant a performance as what it needed to be. Johnny Wilson had some very untimely drops. Like, I think if you get those situations early, and people like to bring up the Vanderbilt loss to Florida without realizing what the full game looked like. Vanderbilt jumped on Florida with turnovers and other different things. But once you get up 2 to 3 scores on a team, it completely changes what your offense is. So we could have blown Florida out if we made Anthony Richardson have to be a quarterback and they get rid of the running game, but we never put them in that position. So, but I think the offense still did enough. And obviously, to quote Bobby again, if the other team doesn't, if all you have to do is score more points than the other team at the end of the game, and that's considered a win. So they did a lot.
Mark touched on this at the top of the show, and I think Mark was 100% correct when he said this. 9 wins was beyond the ceiling. I said 8 wins. I think Mark said 7. I think Logan said 7 off the top at the start of the year. When you look at what this regular season was for the Florida State Seminoles, 9 wins, and you could argue we were one mistake call against NC State away from being a 10-win team in the regular season. Give me a grade for this regular season. If you're grading the Florida State Seminoles right now as a team, what grade do you give them?
Am I grading them on a curve or grading them on the on where they should be at?
On the curve. We'll give you on the curve. We're positive here.
On the curve, I got to give them an A. Considering what my expectations were and what everybody else's expectations were. Many pundits said that this was I think Vegas had us at 6 to 7 wins. So you're 2 wins above what everybody dictated what a 100 would be for you. Many fans and many people actually. I coach high school ball around here, and our defensive coordinator and our secondaries coach said Florida State would be lucky to win 6 games, go 5 and 7, and they're going to fire Mike Norvell. I told them, I'll bet you your coaching stipend. I was like, if you feel that strongly about it, bet me your coaching stipend and watch me spend it in a crap game. And as I did to a friend with the LSU game, I asked him what his monthly salary was. I won't tell you how much I lost in Harris. But I got somebody's monthly salary and I bet it all on black because I don't bet BS. Sorry about that. Kai. Kai.
Connie?
She's at swimming. You got to go. Daddy's work.
Oh.
Sorry about that, guys.
All good.
But
Get a little
what I was
peek into
saying.
the life of Big Game James.
Seriously, big game James going on here.
But anyways, the point is that I'm gonna give them an A because even I said eight wins with a 10 at the ceiling, and so right now they're pushing 10, and you're talking about Mike Norvell has now won more games in one season as he did in the previous 2 seasons combined. So you have to give props where props due. Now, what we did was the standard is the standard, but we can lower expectations in preparations to get to the standard. Next season, the expectations are way higher, considering depending upon what's coming back and the schedule. But I'd give them a B plus at the stringents.
Looking ahead. Sorry, one more quick question.
Jason, go ahead.
No, one more quick question I have. Then looking ahead past the bowl game, let's say Florida State wins the bowl game and is a 10-win team, finishes here 10-3. Does this team start 2023 as a top 10 ranked team in the preseason?
God, I hope not. And I'm not saying that they should. They should. But I hope not because I want them to have something to play for. Yep. If you remember 2013, we didn't start off the season as a top 10 team. I think we were top 20 if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah. It's like 11, 12.
I thought it was like mid-range. Yeah, so we were around there. That's where I want to be able to be at. Start 15 to 20 and earn your spot. But I do believe that a majority of this team is going to return. And I think there's going to be a lot of hype. And now the problem is, how do you coach and how do you maintain the hype? And that's a whole nother element of what Mike Norvell is going to have to be able to maintain and establish. I would like that I would like to have 2 years under our belt of developing some stuff. So, but I do see us winning the bowl game, especially if they match us up with a Big 12 team. But I think it's going to be now if we kind of backdoor our way into the into one of these New Year's Six bowls through a lot of randomness happening this next weekend coming up. I don't know. I don't want Bama anymore after writing my first article. Bama don't take this ass whipping personally. I learned my lesson. We're not ready for Bama, but I will love to. I just like watching entertaining ball games. And that was the first time in quite some time we've watched 12 games where you as a Florida State fan did not have to switch the game at halftime and that you did not get blown out. And that's, I got to give a high five to that. Plus, I got to give another high five and a pat on the back. We have 2 top 15 ranked coordinators. The offense is ranked 14th in the nation. The defense is ranked 15th and 14th in the nation. And Fuller in that secondary has a top 4 ranked against in yards. They've only given up 1,907 yards on this season in the air. That is freaking impressive. And when you consider the quarterbacks and what their rankings were when they came into this season, you talk about Jaden Daniels, you talk about Malik Cunningham. I can't remember Syracuse quarterback's name off the top of my head. Boston College's quarterback. Yep. Boston College's quarterback. Anthony Richardson was a Heisman candidate. Tyler Van Dyke was a Heisman candidate. NC State's quarterback, before we knocked him out, was a top quarterback. You're talking about going up against 7 to 8 quarterbacks that everybody had some kind of high praise for, and you gave up under, I think that's about 180-something yards a game. That's crazy. That's insane.
The most impressive thing for me, I would say, is the fact that of our 9 wins is, yes, the LSU game was a 1-point win. The Louisville game was a 4-point win. The Florida game was a 7-point win. Those were all by a possession or less. Every other win this season was a blowout. Starting from Duquesne was a blowout. Boston College was a blowout. Then you go Georgia Tech, Miami, Syracuse, Louisiana. All were blowout, convincing victories. I love the fact that our offense stepped up this season. But yes, I will give Adam Fuller all the credit in the world. We were out here bashing him for the way that defense played last season. And then for this year to turn around and that performance, even in the Florida game, I'll give you credit. Yes, Florida was a good team. Florida was the best team we played after our second bye week. But give Florida all the credit in the world. But I'm going to say this right here. Mark, if you want to cut this and post this, I forgive Mike Norvell for the Jacksonville State game. I will never forget it. because I will still say that's the most embarrassing loss in Florida State history. But the turnaround from where this team was, where we were, and some of our commenters have said this, saying, "Boy, what a difference a year makes." A year ago, we were frustrated. A year ago, we were figuring out what was going to happen. A year ago, we said, these coaches were on the hot seat. These coaches were, or we're going to be coaching for their jobs this year. I am very happy with where we are right now as a program.
I'm going to put two more aspects on this that make the 9-3 finish even more impressive. One would be, and I talked about this in the preseason, we talked about it when we reviewed the schedule. This team had to face the toughest schedule in the ACC, both in conference and out of conference. Played an LSU team that's playing for the SEC championship game on Saturday, and played an in-conference schedule again against the far tougher of the two divisions, plus who they have to play. Miami didn't turn out to be a good team, but on paper at the time, Miami and who was the other game against in the Coastal?
Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech, yeah. So anyway, it was by far the toughest schedule in the ACC, number one. Number two, anybody who does power rankings wants to rate the ACC. Obviously, Clemson's won all of its games, and they won all of its games, and they play in the tougher division. You'd have to rank them number one. However, who's playing better football right now? And if the two teams got together the way Clemson looks right now, they got together again. I don't know that Florida State's not right now the best team in the conference.
Hey, nine of our wins were against teams with 500, or excuse me, 9 of our games were against teams with 500 or better records. The only teams we did not play, or excuse me, the teams that we played that did not have a record of 500 or better were Boston College. I believe it was Boston College, Miami, and Georgia Tech. That's pretty impressive.
And by the way, the 2013 was number 11 in the preseason AP poll.
Okay.
Josh, can we watch our language here? Josh Hutchins, please. Yes, I agree the offensive line has a lot of work to do, but please.
I think again, a lot of stuff people are nitpicking on. If you go back and you look at probably what our offensive line's ranking is, you're going to look to see a sack rating that's like, what do you judge them by? You judge them by sacks. You judge them by rushing yards. I always tell people that's how you know if you have a dominant offensive line. You're going to have a 1,000-yard rusher. You're well over 1,000 yards right now, as it is. You've got your quarterback had plenty of time, and there are some things that I think it's unfortunate, right? Because Jordan Travis's biggest strength is his legs, but it's also very difficult to defend a quarterback who you have no idea where he's at. My son's godfather, who's an offensive lineman at Marshall, he talks about it. It's called the flashlight. Yeah, your butt. You're holding the flashlight with your butthole, and you have to make sure that the flashlight is always aimed at the quarterback when you're doing your pass pro. So it's like you're just sitting there. But if you don't know if he's here, there, behind you, in front of you, it's very hard to keep a flashlight on somebody. So I think some of the sacks are really just more so J-Trav doing too much. I also think that the offense, and he did this against Florida, J-Trav would be a Heisman Trophy candidate right now. And Florida State would be 11-1 right now had J-Trav just used his legs and not tried to be a quarterback in that 3-game stretch. I'd argue that if J-Trav tried to play like he played against NC State, Clemson, and Wake Forest against Florida, FSU loses that game. But a lot of those big time plays came when he just didn't see anything and he used his legs and he made them account for it. So I think a lot of people are just nitpicking on things because that's what we're used to doing and not really appreciating what it is that we have and what we've gone up against. I mean, was it Gervin Dexter for Florida? That's a grown man. Princely is there the other defensive end that kind of came on the scene after Cox left. That's another grown man. You've played against some cats, and I don't think FSU fans have kind of just sat back and just taken a woosah and just really embraced and smelled the flowers as you're enjoying this because we're so used to not having anything. But we got nice things, guys.
Talk about smelling the flowers. Jason, do you see we've got a special viewer tonight? One, Logan Robinson, a little bit under the weather, feeling like crap, to use his words. feeling like crap, but still watching. And as a comment to make about Jason here.
I think Logan got trucked by the fans who rushed the field. That's why I got the hell out of there real quick. I wasn't trying to get my camera broken, so I was interviewing Jordan, and the SID said some language that we cannot say on air about how we need to get Jordan out of here, and then we see the massive fans. So
Yeah,
I think Logan got trucked by some of the fans there.
it got uncomfortable really quick. Being on the sideline, like I was just like, yeah, I'm getting claustrophobic, so let me get out of here.
Yes. And for those who want to knock our fans for rushing the field, get over it. It's the first time we beat Florida in Tallahassee since 2016. First time we beat them since 2017. Get over it. Our students were drunk. They rushed the field. Let them have their moment.
Well,
So people are knocking that because Florida's not a good football team.
On paper, you're looking at on paper. It's why are you rushing against a 6-5 Florida team? I think was more of the knock against that. But when you understand where Florida State was coming from, this is a Florida State team that has not had a winning season since 2017. This is a Florida State team that hasn't beaten Florida since 2017. This is a Florida State team that hasn't beaten Florida and Miami in the same season since 2016. This is a Florida State team that just over one calendar year ago had the worst loss in program history. And then you're now talking about a team that after that, before we knew what was going to happen the next day, you're talking about a Florida State team that had a shot at the Orange Bowl, a Florida State team that has a shot at 10 wins. So I think for all of that, that's the frustration of students who, if you're a senior at Florida State this season, this is your first time you're going to get a winning season. So, yeah, let them have their moment.
Bigger than 2016, if you're a freshman in college right now, you were in 6th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Or you were in 7th grade, excuse me, the last time that Florida State's been able to do this. 2013, you were in elementary school since the last time you've seen this thing. So people are talking about like I had somebody text me, that's not the standard. I'm like, these kids don't know what the standard is. Like I could talk about it, but I played almost 17 years ago was my last game. Like that was a long time ago. I have a grown ass daughter. I have my son was 9. He was a baby. I was rocking him while watching the Miami game during that 2013 magical season. Killing my baby boy wasn't even a thought. So I mean, it's just a lot of stuff that comes into it. But I'll let people know as a booster, which I encourage all FSU fans to be a booster. That's why I tell people all the time. I talk trash not just because I was a guy who played it. I talk trash like my grandmama. I will give you money and I will support you, but I'm going to talk my trash if I'm giving you the money and you're not doing what I need you to do, because I'm going to continue to do it. They sent us an email earlier in the week saying that, last game of the season, you can go take pictures on the field. The police were already ready for this. Yeah. This wasn't a spontaneous, let's just storm the field for Florida. This was I got told somebody it would have got weird because there'd have been a bunch of people on the field after the game, even if Florida won. So like that would have been even harder to explain. I'm just glad they made sure they did what they were supposed to do.
And let's give the fans a lot of credit. You're talking about this is the first time Florida State and Florida have played the regular season on a Friday, on a non-Saturday, since 1979. The fans were there. The students were there. The students came back. I drove up on Thanksgiving night, and I saw plenty of fans, both Florida fans and Florida State fans, coming up from South Florida. This felt like one of the old Florida State Florida games in the sense of the fans there. There were a lot of Florida fans there in that stadium. So I don't want to say the rivalry is completely back, but with the way this game is played, with Florida State getting a win, I think it's pretty close to that.
Appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football, our Florida State show for 188 consecutive weeks.
This is our first show as the state champions. Think about that.
State champions.
It feels good. For all you UCF fans, if you want some of that, come get some.
Well,
I'm calling out UCF.
Look at that. Yeah, I definitely think Florida State would be, as I tweeted out when I promoted the show, it was ownership of the Sunshine State. Absolutely. If you're going to question that, it's got to and bring like a UCF into that argument. They've got to have like a 2017 year, and the big three have to be like playing like garbage to make that kind of separation to say, okay, maybe UCF owns the state, but under these circumstances, they're playing different levels of football.
UCF doesn't want this smoke. They don't want this.
Well, the funny thing is this, Mark, is that UCF had an opportunity. All they had to do was win. And we would have gotten a chance to see this. And then there could have been a true argument for state supremacy, but you lost. I think you lost back to back. I was like, I talked my trash because there was some UCF fans on Twitter who were kind of going back and forth and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you lost on purpose because you knew we're not going to take you lightly like Florida did last year. We're actually happy to be in a bowl game. And all of our guys are playing. Jared Versus said he's coming to play the bowl game and doesn't know. Jamie Robinson says he's playing. Everybody says that they're coming back to play, and you're going to get the full brunt of our strength. And boy, it might have got ugly quick because you lost to Louisville, if I remember correctly.
They did.
And we beat Louisville, and it's just it's even the common opponents, but it's no knock to what they've done. But they better hope that Deion Sanders doesn't get their USF job because it could be their little run as arguing about being number 4 might be over.
Speaking of greatness, I want to give you, James, your chance. And we talked about this a little bit in prepping for this show. Give me your MVPs for the regular season. Give me your offensive and defensive MVPs for the regular season. Well,
I mean, I think it's pretty easy when you see these two guys when they played at their highest level. The team looked different, and when they weren't. We obviously went on a 3-game skid, and I'd say that's Jordan Travis, a young man who, again, I've been extremely high on. I think if Mike and I argued with people last year when we brought Mackenzie Milton in, and all jokes aside, I call him the Disney movie kid and the one-leg guy. But if it would have worked, it would have been a phenomenal script. The script would have wrote itself, but it wasn't working. And you had a guy who probably could have got you 7 wins last year. But it's one of those things where the more he plays, the better he looks, the more confidence he has. And you can see the guys gravitate toward him when he's not trying to take stupid chances. I believe he has a 5-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would like him to hold on the ball a little bit better as far as like with the fumbles, but that comes with the scrambling quarterback. But you just see a guy who's never drops his head. He's always positive. He's always cheery. And he's just a fun kid to be around. I said kid, but young man to be around. If you've getting a chance to interview him or you got a chance to know him, he's very engaging. He has a confidence, but he's not arrogant. And then on the flip side of that, you've got Jared Verse. And Jared Verse is a guy who I got a chance to see lightning twice. When I saw Jermaine Johnson at the first Jacksonville practice, I said, man, Jermaine Johnson, that's an MFer right there, man. That's a tough guy to block. He was just physical, imposing, like you would expect a SEC lineman to be. But then when I saw Jared Verse, I said, man, see, Jermaine Johnson, I could cut block. I could find something to do to be able to help me block him, and I could game plan for him. It's like Mario Williams. Mario Williams was a bad man, but I could block Mario Williams because I could come in with a strategy. Guys like Cameron Wembley, guys like the athletic defensive ends that are strong, that can bull rush, that are strong enough to bull rush you, but athletic enough to be able to handle your tricks. Those are tougher, man. And when I told people, I said, man, he might be better than JJ. And people called me crazy. And I said, man, I don't know, man. But like to see his impact, you can see it's easy to call him the MVP of the defense. And there's plenty of guys whose level of play improved. But those two are the guys who I believe are just hands down the best on their respective sides of the ball.
Yeah, the thing with Jordan that's amazing, Jordan was originally going to be my guy. The thing about him is this stat boggles my mind. There's only been 4 times in Florida State history with a quarterback with over 3,000 combined yards. The other 3, Charlie Ward, Chris Winkie, Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston 23. Chris Winkie in 2013, Chris Winkie in 2000, Charlie Ward in 1993. All the years they won the Heisman Trophy. So Jordan Travis is in some serious company with that one. For me on the offensive side of the ball, though, you take Jordan Travis, I'm going to go Trey Benson. Trey Benson, to me, at running back, you talk about a dog at running back, he's put in 100 yards a game, getting 100 yards against Miami, getting 100 yards against Florida, 3 touchdowns against Florida, 100 yards against Syracuse. He's got 965. I think he gets 1,000 yards on the first drive in this bowl game. The thing with him also, we talked about what Jordan had to do this year for us to succeed was to be a better passer, because we know what he can do running the ball and seeing can he do it throwing the ball. And I think he answered that question in spades this season. But you also give Trey Benson, when Trayshawn Ward went down, Trey Benson stepped up and he became that dog in the running back room. And he became that weapon to where you knew, okay, it's not just Jordan Travis running the ball. You've also got Trey Benson back there. And so Trey Benson, to me, was the most valuable player. On the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to throw out a name, and I love Verse. I love Jamie Robinson. I love these guys. The name to me, Tatum Bethune. Tatum Bethune, the linebacker transfer, Miami native, transferred from UCF. Second on the team in tackles this season, had 2.5 sacks. More importantly for me, he made that linebacker room relevant again. I love Kalen DeLoach. I love those guys in the linebacker room. But he made that linebacker room relevant. He was that dog. He was that guy on the defensive side of the ball. You had Verse up front. When he was healthy, you had Cooper. You had Fabian Lovett. You had those guys up front. But to have that linebacker who could play, and he was all over the field. He was on the field. He was great on pass defense. He was great on rush defense. To me, without Tatum Bethune, I don't know if Florida State's a 9-win team without Tatum Bethune. Because I think you look at some of those games where he would come in, he would get those plays on third down. He would get those stops on the defensive side of the ball. So for me, he's the MVP on defense.
I have no issue with that. I like that. I think that linebacker play was definitely elevated. Kalen DeLoach played well, but Tatum definitely took it to another level.
We get a lot of people in the chat that are clamoring for Randy Shannon to be the DC.
Okay. Let me.
You take this one because I think we have a different opinion, so I want to hear yours first, James.
All right. Why? Randy Shannon has never had a top 15 in the modern era. Randy Shannon has never had the success that Florida State's defense has had this season. Randy Shannon's problem is the same problem that Mickey Andrews had. He couldn't stop the spread. Same problem that Kevin Steele has had, and why he's been fired at every stop. Eventually, people figure him out. I think what people have done, and this is why I always tell people, you have to consume all media. Mark Rogers, Fifth Quarter, Game Day, whatever they're doing at On 3 or 247. Go, NBC. Check out my guy Jay Peasy.
Thank you.
I say this to say, and then also do things on your own. And I think I have the raw data here. Because I've been looking at it because people have been making this dumb argument the entire time. Florida State. Just make sure this is the right year. Yes, it's 2002. Right now has the 4th ranked passing yards allowed.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the number 14 overall defense in the nation. I just told you all the quarterbacks that you went up against. Your defense is performing at a high level and you still have holes. There's never been a situation where the guys weren't in position to make the play. They just didn't make the play. That's the thing. Like, as we say in coaching circles, the only thing I could have done better for you is run the play for you. And I think people have had this thing on Fuller's because you didn't know who Fuller was. He's not a name. Which I'd argue that most coordinators that are really, really good in sports, you have no idea who they are. You only know who Randy Shannon is because one, he's been at every school in the state of Florida. But he was part of Miami when Miami was good in the last time they won a national championship. And he was the head coach. But what Fuller's been able to do at Florida State and the jumps that they have made each year has been astronomical. Especially when you look at the attrition. What you feel and what you have been told is that he's not a good recruiter. What you feel and what you have been told is that he is not a good coach. The problem with both of those things is that the data does not match what your feelings are. See, feelings are relative. I can only argue. It's kind of like I talked about Miami. What do you have tangible that proves that he's not a good defensive coordinator. Even when you talk, and then on top of that, let's talk about games. How many times over the 3 years that has Fuller put in some situations that were bogus? Nobody goes for it for fourth and 2 inside of their own 40. That is just not good football. That is not complimentary football. Don't care what the analytics say. How many times have we seen Mike Norvell, which again, gamble, but how many times have we seen Mike Norvell take that gamble, fail, and then the defense have to come right back out there and do stuff? How many 3 and outs? When you look at what they did against LSU, FSU dominated LSU into the last 5 minutes of the game. They had 2 great drives. One of the drives would have been negated had they just not fumbled it on the 1 yard line. Complimentary football. They have not had one passer throw for over 250 yards this season. The best passing game was 240-something yards by Malik Cunningham. Not even Sam Hartman. Sam Hartman had, I think, 223 yards. Everybody else literally it was a governor. It's like almost a governor. Those top quarterbacks that I named did not go over 208. Most of them didn't go over 175. How do you get rid of a coordinator that does that for you with most of the guys coming back? Unless you're making an upgrade from Mark Stoops, who went to go get a head coaching job, and you're bringing in Jeremy Pruitt. I would not do that. Now, I'll do that for Jim Leonard, the Wisconsin defensive coordinator, but I'd be damned if I do that for Randy Shannon. Because I've seen Randy Shannon as the defensive coordinator at the University of Florida. I've seen Randy Shannon as the defensive coordinator at UCF. I've seen Randy Shannon toward the end of the years at Miami. And you know what we saw? We saw a lot more points and a lot more BS and a lot more blown coverages and a lot more missed assignments than you could ever count on what you've seen with Florida State with Coach Fuller. So I just think people got to be careful what you've been told, because what you've been told is not necessarily provable, in my opinion.
I will go on record as saying I thought Randy Shannon should have gotten the defensive coordinator job after last season. Because I know Randy Shannon personally. I've covered Randy Shannon when he was the head coach here at the University of Miami. And I will say, I don't equate what he did when he was defensive coordinator at UCF and UF, because I believe those were different players than what he had when he was the defensive coordinator at Miami. That was a much different team that he was dealing with, and much better players he was dealing with at Miami than he ever dealt with at both Florida and UCF. That being said, I'm going to keep it simple. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it didn't break. And you look at, yes, did we give up 38 points to Florida? Yes. Did we give up 34 points to Clemson? Yes. Did we give up 31 points to Wake Forest? Yes, we did. Well, what did we do the rest of the season? 7 points to Duquesne, 23 to LSU. Yeah, we gave up 31 to Louisville, 14 to Boston College, 19 to NC State, 16 to Georgia Tech, 3 to Miami, 3 to Syracuse, 17 to Louisiana. The defense, for the most part this season, was light years better than what we've seen before. If the defense had showed up the same way it did in 2021 this season, yes, absolutely, I would agree 100%. It would be time for a change. But it is a 180-degree different defense in 2022 from what we'd seen in previous years. So I don't think, aside from Adam Fuller leaving to take a head coaching job, which I don't believe he's being offered one, stick with it.
And one more thing, too. I'd say look at his second half adjustments. Mm-hmm. It's insane, the second half adjustments. Wake Forest scored on the first drive of the second half, did not score again until they got a field goal to basically seal the win. Offense just ran out of time from scoring points. NC State scored one touchdown. All Florida State had to do was, like, if the kicker could make one kick, Florida State wins that game. But we didn't score enough. Clemson, if you go back and you look, like, Clemson scored no points, I believe. I think they got a little bit in the third quarter, but they got blanked the rest of the half. We just didn't put up the fight. Florida, most of the adjustments they made in the second half, for the most part, was great. I think that's just kind of something else that I think people take advantage or take for granted when it comes to Fuller.
So where's that coming from? This Adam Fuller hate. You made a great case. I love the quarterback case because that didn't really hit me. And I'm a guy that digests this information constantly every day. That you got this succession of ACC quarterbacks, which I, coming into this season, thought this is the best conference for quarterbacks. It was last year and will be this year. And they didn't put up numbers against FSU. And I'm a big yards per play guy. I see Florida State's 11th in the country in yards per play. And what I already stated a few minutes ago is what I consider to be by far the toughest schedule in the conference. Where's this coming from?
Well, in the beginning, again, out of all of the coaches, people wanted Glenn Schumann. I believe that's it, Glenn Schumann, or my guy who's at Oregon right now, Dan Lanning. These are the guys that, because they had them Norvell ties, those are the guys that we wanted, and they are coming from schools that are sexy. So you don't get those guys. So you feel like, okay, now I'm going to go bring my guy from Memphis who I'm comfortable with. And then when you look at how it was reported during COVID, and I remember telling, and this is what made people think that I didn't like Mike Norvell. It was just that I am a stickler for consistency. If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. So people were saying our defense wasn't stopping anybody. I was saying we're not scoring any points. What do you mean the defense isn't stopping anybody? You got to score points. And they're like, well, the offense isn't clicking because of COVID. And I asked, was there some secret rule in the NCAA that said the defense could practice during COVID when the offense couldn't? It was just very easy because, and I would say this too, the climate was extremely toxic because we did something that was unprecedented. And I'd argue too that people argue sports and politics far too similar. You don't argue to have great conversations or discourse. You argue to win. And then what happens when you can't prove your point, you start playing the dozens. You start picking on each other. You reduce the name calling. So it's easier to say that somebody's not any good than it is to actually look at the fact that maybe as a team we aren't any good. You have articles that are written about our team is young and our team isn't talented, but then articles that are written of it's the defense's fault. And they're bringing up the statistics. And when you look at who made the biggest jump last season, it was the defense that literally cut their ranking in half, if I remember correctly, from being in the 100s to being in, was it top 60-ish? Something like that. And then you saw the next move forward. It's progression. I'd also say is the other reason why is this is the first time our guys have had a consistent defensive coordinator for 3 straight years. Same thing with the offense. The offense is better because you've had the same voice in the same plays for 3 years, basically. But I think it's just he was the fun guy to pick on. Woodson was a cooler hire because he's coming from a bigger school, Auburn. Everybody thought he was going to get Travis Hunter. You just felt like it's cooler. And again, it's just he's the guy on the staff that you don't know. And he's easy to pick on. He's older. He's not cool. He doesn't there's nothing. He doesn't have a nickname for his defense. But I'll say if you want to know who he is as a man and as a coach, go. I think is it Brandon Snowcone? One of them cats posted something up there about the recruiting of a defensive end, and it was recorded, and him talking about being a star. And him just, really just casting the vision of him coming to Florida State and being the next Jermaine Johnson, being the next Jared Verse, being the next defensive end, maybe coming in there being like Patrick Payton. And then I also remember this. If anybody wants to know who to like and when the season's going to be going, my oldest son is basically the groundhog from Groundhog Day. He will tell you if things are going to come. The only coach that he liked was Fuller. He's always liked Coach Fuller. Coach Fuller had a 30-minute conversation with him about Pop Warner football last Thursday night before when we did the walkthrough. And the reason why I knew this season was going to be good, my son has never smiled at Mike Norvell. Actually, just mean mugged Mike Norvell. Never happy. Mike's always happy to see him. He's never happy to see Mike. Do you know what he did this year? The first time he saw Mike Norvell, big old Kool-Aid smile. And I actually had some friends being like, "Oh crap, this season might be different." Trey actually smiled at Mike Norvell. Trey used to look at some of these coaches and players like, "Why does my dad's always talking about the standard, and he's got me around a bunch of these losers. I don't like hanging around losers." That was the face that he made. But this year it was just different. He walked over and he was like, he gave the approval. So, but again, Fuller is I just think people just like picking on Fuller for whatever reason.
James, let's wrap up the show here with a simple question. Finish this sentence. When it comes time for a bowl game, Florida State will be playing in the which bowl?
Cheese it.
Against
Texas Tech.
Oh,
I hope.
You're going. Okay. Why? What gives you that idea?
I want 10 wins.
Okay.
I don't care who it's against. We could be playing the Florida Deaf and the Blind School.
Texas
I don't
Tech,
care. I want 10
5.
wins.
That's going to be the matchup? Really?
That's what people have been projecting.
Huh.
It comes down to it. We'll be the third, I think what happens is the cheese, it's just about selection. The only thing that would be crazy and what I would hope, actually not really, but it would be cool because I want to go back to New Orleans, is if Clemson loses to North Carolina and TCU can be in the playoff. Big 12 SEC is a Sugar Bowl qualifier. TCU would be in the playoff, so they would be pulled. Now it's an at-large. And there's a maybe we could be ranked high enough to be able to be pulled into that.
But the thing is, if it's a close loss, and then here's the dynamics, because I asked somebody from the Orange Bowl committee. If Kansas State can somehow keep it close against TCU and Kansas State stays ahead of us, they would go to the Sugar Bowl as far as the same way
they would represent.
way.
Yeah.
Right. So
they're going to try to keep it that. It just all depends on where it shakes out with our ranking. But that's the only kind of clutch one. Gator Bowl right down the street for me. Would love to do that, but also the payouts a little bit less. Like again, it actually really doesn't matter since we all split the money anyway.
Right.
But I wouldn't mind playing ending the season in Orlando and beginning of the season in Orlando. So it's just preference.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be in Orlando. I think it'll be the Cheez-It Bowl. I wouldn't mind the free box of Cheez-Its they give each member of the media. So shout out to the Cheez-It Bowl for that one. It really doesn't matter. I'm not going to get to see my Knowles play 7 miles away in the Orange Bowl. So pretty much Clemson can go to hell for losing to South Carolina. That's pretty much what I have to say on that one. Clemson screwed up my New Year's plans. Clemson screwed up being able to see my Seminoles in the Orange Bowl. So I hope North Carolina just dog stomps them. I don't think they will, but I hope North Carolina dog stomps them in the ACC championship game. To hell with Dabo Swinney. That used car salesman can go to hell. Yeah, I said it.
William, thank you so much for the super sticker.
Thank you,
there.
William.
We appreciate that. We appreciate everybody being here. Florida State Seminoles live every Wednesday right here at the Voice of College Football, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Do the same thing you did tonight in getting in here, but you know what? Do it 1 or 2 or 5 better. Bring some friends with you next Wednesday.
And before we go, I just want everyone, before you go to sleep tonight, if you're the praying type or whatnot, just send a thought up for Willie Taggart. He lost his job at FAU. We love you, Willie. I still love you. I still have nothing but respect for you. Just I hope you find a job somewhere. So thoughts and prayers to the career of Willie Taggart.
He's gonna go hang out with the Harbaughs, man. Willie's all right. He's got a lot of money.
He's gonna collect that check, the same checks we were sending him. FAU's paying it too. So
he should have been. That's what he should have done. Just sat out and just chilled. But yeah, good job, Willie.
Good job. Appreciate it.
James, what do you have out there that people need to know about?
Well, this is my third annual Gifts for Good Grades. If you want to go check out my pin suite at BigGameJames_36. We've actually got the links, the Amazon wish list for the kids. You can buy it. If you live in Tallahassee, there's a drop-off place. There's a place in Jacksonville. If you purchase it and you want to know where to ship it, I'll give you an address to be able to ship it to, and you just put Big Game on it. Or you could donate money to the Cash App, money sign MFTK36 or MFTKFoundation@gmail.com for PayPal. All of that stuff's on there. We're trying to give At least I think we're gonna get to 100 kids. But the goal is to get 200. We partner with Boys Town of North Florida, which is a group home, as well as the kids who did my book bag drive. So anybody who wants to donate to that, please do. Check that out. And that's basically it. And then I won't know if I'm having a tailgate until I know where our bowl game is going to be at. So other than that, just check out Sporadics, check out Fifth Quarter, check out all the kind of cool stuff. It's a lot easier to cover your alma mater when you don't suck.
Jason, what do people need to know?
We will be focusing on pro football and high school football since the University of Coral Gables decided to go 5-7 this season, the school that used to be called the U. So we'll be focused on the Dolphins. They hit on the road for a 3-game stretch. And high school football playoffs continue this week as the state semifinals on the South Florida schools prepare to dominate again. We're coming for you, Jacksonville.
Folks, I'm sure we'll have a lot on the transfer portal and on recruiting here. We are just 2 weeks away from National Signing Day. Make that 3 weeks. Is it 3 weeks? 2 weeks. 2 weeks from Wednesday. Yeah. 2 weeks from today. All right, folks, appreciate you being here. James, thanks for being here. Jason, as always, you guys make this thing happen. Without you, we don't have a show. We don't have a channel. So thank you so much for that. See you guys next week.
State champs. State champs.